Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this afternoon's session, Industry Predictions from 3 Toy Executives. Our session today is being moderated by Logan Ensign, VP of Client Solutions at member company Alloy. Before I hand it off to Logan, we have a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over. A copy of the recording will be made available to everyone who registered in the coming days. So simply look for an email from the Toy Association. You'll be able to access it that way. It will also appear on demand and be available on demand from our website. We will have time for question and answers as the session moves along. So simply use the question box on the bottom of your screen to submit any questions you have. I'm happy now to hand the session over to Logan. Logan, it's all yours.
Excellent. So excited to be here today. And we really do have a great panel put together and some really interesting topics that we're going to cover. So appreciate everyone making time to have this conversation. Just to reemphasize, please do submit those questions through the Q&A. We love having participation and we'll be monitoring that so we can have that conversation. But to get us started, I am excited to be joined by three of Alloy's toy customers today. And so just by way of introduction, we've got Scott Flynn joining us, who is the Chief Commercial Officer at PlayMonster. Scott's a leader in sales, marketing, and management, and has worked in multiple industries with the majority of his career focused in the toy, entertainment, and children's product space through his positions with Lego, Mega Brands, World Wrestling Entertainment, and more. He's an expert at bringing quality products to retailers and consumers in the US and globally. And since 2014, Scott's been with PlayMonster. As Chief Commercial Officer over there, Scott's played a key role in the growth of the company, doubling distribution in the US and scaling up 220% sales growth. Scott also holds a BA in management from Auburn and has completed multiple professional trainings throughout his career. So super excited to have Scott join us and share some wisdom with us.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Next, we've got Rick Abundis, who is the SVP of Sales and Operations at Bonkers Toys. So Rick is a successful executive and entrepreneur with a demonstrated history of working in every level in the consumer goods industry, particularly in sales and marketing, team management, and strategic partnerships. He started his career in the toy industry at Mattel in 2000 and subsequently has held executive positions in sales at Sepia, MGA Entertainment, and Moose Toys. And after several years of building his own toy company, he joined Bonkers Toys in 2019 as SVP of Sales and Operations. He brings to the job a wealth of knowledge in global sales, analysis, and corporate strategy. And Rick is a graduate of UCLA. So super excited to have you here as well, Rick.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Excellent. And lastly, we've got Teddie Leo, who is the Vice President of Global S&OP and Analytics at Moose Toys. So Teddie's a seasoned veteran in the toy industry. He's got over 16 years of experience in sales analytics, strategic planning, and S&OP. And his work's been dedicated to helping teams transform insights into action to navigate the dynamic demands of today's consumer products landscape, which I'd argue is even more dynamic coming through COVID. So super excited to have you here as well, Teddie.
Thanks, Logan.
So a set of superstars here to help talk us through some really interesting topics. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we just want to kick off with a really pertinent topic here to get us started. So we do know that we're all still navigating really an unprecedented time. And that's made all of our jobs a lot more challenging, a lot more unpredictable. And so curious, what strategies are you all employing to mitigate these constant but also unpredictable supply chain disruptions that you're seeing? So we'll start here with Rick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. This after 22 years, it's the first time I do one of these things, so it's great to be here. Especially around the industry people too. It's all great to get back together. Just wanted to start. I know my part is to talk a little bit about supply chain and some of the things that we're doing and strategies that we're doing to kind of mitigate some of the challenges that we may be facing in these unprecedented times. But I want to talk a little bit about, how we got here, right? It's kind of like the elephant in the room, right? Kind of like, if you go back a couple of years, let's go back to 2020, what happened? Obviously, you had the devastating effect of a pandemic with COVID that really kind of shocked not only the US, but the whole world. And, we always talk about how resilient the toy industry is, right? So, it was surprising to see how well, as we were battling through this as a population, the toys continue to kind of be strong. We saw some things really kind of stick out in certain categories like outdoor, and people started to adapt as to what type of toys and gaming they would buy. And also there was that shift between brick and mortar sales versus online sales because people were home and were ordering from home more often. So we saw very little, if any, for some categories, impact in the toy industry in 2020 when the pandemic broke out. And then you fast forward into 2021, what do you see? You see the introduction of vaccines, right? And then the introduction of maybe how to treat the sickness, whoever had it. And so there was that level of confidence that people started going out to stores and getting that consumer activity going. And then you start, obviously the first half of 2021, we also had one of the last payments of the relief checks, right? So there was cash in people's pockets, right? So what did that happen in 2021? We saw some, record-breaking sales in the springtime, almost like an anomaly that we all understand now. Later in 2021, which is bringing me back to the supply chain situation, is that you saw in June, COVID was still kind of lingering, right, in certain spots and in certain areas, and especially in China and in ports. And there were some port closures due to the fact that there were some, there was still some, little spikes in certain areas. And so that impacted the supply chain. That impacted how quickly we got product into the US and quickly how we got product into stores eventually. And, you saw the second half of 2021 from coming off a record-breaking season, you saw fall 2021 being a little anemic as far as inventory, right? Because product wasn't quite there yet due to the fact that there were some delays with supply chain. And retailers were saying, how quickly could we get product to stores? Who has product readily available? They were open and free to buy whatever's out here in the US that we could easily ship, right? So we started to see those things and started saying, okay, what could we do to kind of mitigate that for 2022? One of the hangover effects from the delays last year as far as the holiday is obviously the inventory that carried over into spring of 2022, right? So we had a situation in which, there was a little bit of a bottleneck as far as, the product finally released and got to ports in the US for the holiday, but it didn't hit the stores until spring of 2022. And, just throwing some general numbers, like I would say in general, about 15 to 25% of inventory that was slated for the holiday season fell into the spring season of this year. And when you think 15 to 20%, that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you add, the seasonality of toys, right? What, the bulk of your sales are in the fall period, that 15 to 20% looks more like 30 to 40% for the spring period. So that put a lot of pressure of selling of this inventory that was slated for last year's holiday into this year. So we fast forward now to 2022. Obviously, there's no relief checks. There's demand, but obviously we're not seeing the sales that we're seeing in the past. We're seeing the inventory still not being sold through from what carried over from last year, or still kind of hanging around. So I think you add that to the increase of gas prices. You add that to some of the obviously the inflation and the economic situation that's going on now that my colleagues will talk more further on. I mean, it's created a little bit of a situation where retailers last year, coming out spring, were a little more optimistic going into fall of 21. Their attitude this year is from spring into this fall is a little more conservative, right? They've got inventory that they got to deal with, and they've got to figure out, how to kind of sell off what they currently have and sell through, some of the new stuff for fall of 2022. Because as we all know, Christmas is still coming, right? So, I think one of the things, and in general, I think retailers are taking a little bit of a conservative stance on, how they're buying import this fall season. And for for many companies, I'm sure people, the audience out here listening, the majority of the business is import or a balance of import and domestic. And for some people that have the majority of import, and us particularly, we're taking that stance of having that balance between, understanding what the retailers are going to bring in import and finding some opportunities to bring in some domestically to mitigate some of the potential shortfalls on product, and also planning early to get that product in-house in our warehouse as quickly as possible, just in case there's some unexpected delays again, with supply chain, right? Because again, as much as it's slowed down, there's still that possibility of certain spots and spurts of COVID. And once, I don't know if you guys have heard, but when COVID kind of happens in a factory at a port, they shut it down, right? So there's a week shutdown and closures of ports and factories. And so again, this is months back where we start planning on like, okay, let's get some inventory that on upside to bring in domestically to kind of help backfill some of those opportunities out there.
Well, thank you for that, Rick, and that makes a lot of sense. Scott, do you have more to add on this front, how you're thinking about managing supply chain today?
Yeah, Rick did a really nice job of outlining what we've been through the last 2 years. And first of all, thanks for the opportunity to be here today. It's a privilege to be on the panel with Rick and Teddie as well. I think, just to add to what Rick said, first of all, I think the balance between import and domestic inventory is going to be important. I know one of the things as a company, we've always had a pretty good balance there. So we've got a pretty strong domestic setup. So from that standpoint, we're prepared and ready for that. However, it does not alleviate, the problems that still exist from the backup. And it's interesting, the industry was in Long Beach this week for the Astra show. And, I got phone calls from there and I got pictures from my team that was there that the ports were right outside and they could see the ports and they saw the reality. And you had 2,400 retailers especially retailers that saw the reality of the ports and the containers backed up and the ships backed up out there. So it still exists, along with the domestic and import balance that we're employing as a company. There's a couple of other things. It's utilization of multiple ports. So, Long Beach is a port, but how do you use other ports, whether you're in the Northwest, East Coast ports and things like that. So, we're bringing goods in to multiple ports around the country now. So it's not just limited to Long Beach. And, the other thing that really has to happen now is that you still get into issues or strategies where you have to prioritize your goods because you might have to make decisions on certain goods leaving China before others based on, velocity, profitability, retail programs, et cetera. So and on top of everything Rick said with that, I think it's about prioritization. It's about flexibility at ports as well, and being able to expand your scope of where you're actually bringing goods into the country.
Makes a lot of sense. No, it is interesting to put kind of the reality behind the numbers to see those backups, and the visual can be quite impactful there. Excellent. Well, I think that beyond kind of the supply chain disruptions that we're seeing, that's a big challenge we're up against. But also, it's felt like the impact there has been compounded by really unpredictable consumer demand. And so we're also interested in understanding from you all, what predictions do you have on how demand will look over the next 12 to 24 months? And maybe more importantly, what are you doing as an organization to prepare for what you think is coming? And for this one, let's start with Teddie.
Yeah, thanks, Logan. I think as we all know, the U.S. toy industry it's been on a remarkable run these past 2 years. It's up something like 19%. But as we look forward, there are a ton of macroeconomic headwinds that we are concerned about. Everything from U.S. retail sales last month fell 0.3%, and that's the first time it's done that in over 5 months. We've got inflation that's at a 40-year high. We've got interest rates that are going up, in place to rein in said inflation. Stock market's in bear market territory, right? We know this impacts high-income households specifically, and high-income households have been the largest group in sort of propping us up as a toy industry. And then lastly, I think as Rick noted earlier, savings from the pandemic are now depleted, right? Credit card, debt is at an all-time high. We are just seeing signals across the board that are trending in the wrong direction. So we often hear that the toy industry tends to be pretty resilient, especially to external factors. Here at Moose, we are expecting the overall market to trend back towards its sort of pre-pandemic norms. And that for us means probably mid to single digit declines here over the next 2 years. And the data is really beginning to show it. So we see record levels of inventory, as Rick noted, against a backdrop of fewer buyers. Each of those buyers are making fewer purchases in stores. And those fewer purchases, they're buying less toys, right? So in the immediate future, I think retailers need to be very mindful of margins. Margins are being pinched. Open to buy from retailers are being constrained. So those that are actively able to manage inventory, how much we're putting into the market to protect profitability and minimize markdowns, those are the ones that are going to win. They're going to win because retailers are going to prioritize placement, promotions for those partners they feel are doing the best job in helping them manage risk. So, here for Moose, Rick noted it, if you have a US warehouse, if you're able to develop a safety stock program to support retailers, you should definitely be looking into it. Longer term, I think the market's going to pivot on to more widely accessible price points. But I think the thing to note is whatever price point you play at, you've got to deliver perceived value to the end consumer. And you've got to do it while putting focus on your own margins and cash flow, right? So you've got to defend your own margins and cash flow, especially here in the next 2 years, to sort of make it through this pullback. Okay?
Absolutely.
That's
That makes
all
sense.
I've got.
Scott, do you have more to add on this front, thinking about kind of demand over the next year or two and how you all are prepping for that?
Yeah, I think Teddie put a nail on a lot of it, but I think the other thing that will happen is, with inflation, with the industry stabilizing into the single digits more the norm, I think the other thing that will happen is the consumer being value conscious is going to be even more value conscious, especially this year. So I think it's going to impact in a great way the promotional and marketing strategies that you see, not only retailers, but manufacturers deploy, especially in the fourth quarter this year to fight for those dollars that are going to be less available than they have been in the past 2 years, and how they break through the noise and the clutter with being more aggressive from the standpoint of creating value for the consumer, because I think that you're going to see a value conscious consumer more prevalent now than what we've seen in a number of years, just based on a lot of the macroeconomic factors that are impacting us now. And what we're seeing now are things that have not been seen in our lifetime, as far as inflation, gas costs, and things like that. And the other thing that will become very prevalent is everybody's hearing the word shrinkflation now. And what does shrinkflation mean to our industry? How does that impact value? Because value is so important in the toy business as far as what you're giving to your consumer. And and I think as manufacturers, we have to be real careful and make sure that we don't compromise that end result for the kids the children that we service and that we're responsible for bringing joy to every year.
Absolutely. No, thanks for that, Scott. And we have a luxury here of having a lot of folks in the audience, and we're curious at this point to get some more perspective. So I don't know if folks have been able to do polls before, but we'd love to try our hand at that. We're curious for all of you, and Ann, we can kick off the poll question here. Looking forward to the next 12 to 24 months, what demand assumptions are you planning against? Now, folks should have seen the dialogue pop up, and we'll ask Scott to tell us some jokes. I don't know as the results come in. So.
Well, hey, the joke was, hey, for this seminar or this webinar, three toy guys walk into a bar, and the bartender says, "Hey, what's going on.
I'll say for my household, I have an answer to this. I just had my third kid, so that makes 3 under 6. So my household demand is double-digit increase, I think, over the next few years for me.
All right, another customer.
Another customer.
Logan, shall I end the poll?
Yes, yeah, let's do that. Interesting, and maybe not surprising here, seeing some bullish folks in the audience expecting significant growth or some growth year over year, but the majority expecting either flat year over year or single-digit decline year over year. I don't know if folks on the panel have responses. Is that what we would have expected in an audience like this?
Pretty much what we-
I think so.
Yeah,
I think we can all
excellent.
hope for single digit increase. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, the difference between goal and forecast there, right?
Right.
Well, shifting gears a little bit, another interesting component as we think about all of these moving pieces. What are the impacts of these macro forces for you all on pricing and product considerations? And I know, Teddie, you'd alluded to this a little bit, but maybe, Scott, we give you the mic here on how you're thinking about pricing and product strategy and considerations given what's going on.
Yeah, well, I'll go back to comments that were made earlier. Our industry has been resilient, and we've seen recession, we've seen tough economic times, but as my mentors back in the early days at Lego would say, there's always going to be Christmas and kids are always going to need toys. So, one of the things that always happens during these times is that even though households take a hit financially, children don't suffer because parents want to make sure that kids still have, toys and things around them to maintain normalcy in their lives. So we've always been resilient as an industry. These times are a little different than anything we've ever seen before because of, the inflation, the high costs, the record supply chain costs that we're experiencing as companies now that, 2 years ago, who would have thought that containers were going to be 5 times the cost of what they were 2 years ago. So all of those things go into consideration. But one of the things that is great about the toy industry, and I think that a lot of us do this, because toy industry is kind of like the mafia. Once you get in, you just can't get out. And it's all about product and it's all about innovation. And it's the challenge that we have as manufacturers on an annual basis of how do we bring innovation and to toys, but maintain those critical price points that have resonated through this industry for decades. The $5.99, the $9.99, $14.99, $19.99. Now there's a lot of pressure on that right now because of the costs that we're incurring. And I think what you're going to see is that you're going to see retails go up for a while because we're already seeing that in the marketplace. However, you will also see the industry rebound, innovate, and through product development, be able to get back to those price points. And I think that's one of the things that over the next 12 to 24 months, you'll see as an industry that we will be able to align there. And I think the other thing that's great about our industry is that through that innovation, that we'll still be able to bring the value that our customers expect from us at those price points. We just need time to do it. But that's what's so great about this business is that the creativity and the innovation always seems to break through when it has to and when it needs to, and always keeps us at the forefront of trends and what the consumer's looking for.
Makes sense. And how about you, Rick? How are you all thinking about pricing and product considerations?
Yeah, no, Scott just nailed it too as well. I think, those magic price points have been since I started in the industry, back in the 90s. I think what we want to do is kind of maintain that. We've seen, the price elasticity is one thing that we've noticed. It's very sensitive. Retailers tried it this year with some of the cost increases and some of the retail changes, there's a psychological thing that happens, when you go above that $39.99 price point and just raise it $1, it's you see a dramatic impact in sales just from that $1 increase. Same thing, even from a $9.99 to a $11.99. It's you definitely get to see the impact, and at the end of the day, you got to measure. What are you trading off? You may be trading off margin percentages, but you're giving away margin dollars, in the long run. So it's going back to what Scott said, is innovating and providing, product that, again, and then Scott and also Teddie mentioned, you got to have that perceived value to maintain those magic price points. And that's on us to kind of be creative in that way. I think consumers are, look, if an item starts to, consumers are beginning to kind of accept some of the price increases on some items. But I think in general, when you look at the overall mass as far as volume, it does impact quite a bit. And so trying to stay in those magic price points are key.
Makes sense. So we have some good questions coming in from the audience. One that's particularly relevant, because we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk more about retail relationships and managing retailers. But a question from the audience here: any insights from this group on how the dollar and value channel will perform during these times? So interested to hear how you're all framing up opportunities within this channel in particular. So I don't know if any of you all have strong points of view or perspectives on that front.
Well, I think it's a huge opportunity, and it's one that we've been pursuing as a company for a while now. I mean, the sheer number of doors is incredible, and I think that you have to just the value channel has a certain way of a certain product mix and a certain price point balance that they're looking for. But I think what the value channel offers are ways for us to position our brands in different ways, from an entry level or an introductory perspective that can feed our larger businesses at mass and e-com. So I think that's one of the ways we're looking at, is how does it complement our brands, and how does it introduce people to some of our brands in a way that brings value but has them coming back for more, where they can go to the larger retailers for the from the normal sets and normal products that they can really begin to immerse themselves in our brands and products.
Yeah, we're seeing that too. I think the big opportunity is in those value chains as well. It kind of gives, it's given us an opportunity to kind of separate and differentiate with what we offer to the mass retailers and the secondary markets. I think having an opportunity to come up with something unique with the value chains, it's just another opportunity. As Scott mentioned, there's just, the doors are immense, and the opportunities there for that.
Makes sense. And this is another question that came in, maybe more particular for you, Teddie, on you commented on safety stocks for retailers. For those with domestic warehouses, on average, what % of safety stock are you holding relative to confirmed import orders already written by retailers, or maybe just more elaboration on how you're thinking about that concept in particular?
Yeah. At Moose, the general management teams, we align sort of at the beginning of a season and set what we call a consensus target, right? So knowing all of the external factors, factoring in past history, we are able to sort of arrive at what our perceived demand on specific items are. And then sort of based on what the commitments are coming in from our retailers, whatever the gap is, generally what we're bringing in from a safety stock perspective. On average, I would say that's anywhere from 10 to 20%. We don't bring safety stock, nor do I recommend you bring in safety stock on the majority of your items. I would say 30% of our portfolio, all of our big bets, all of our key items, those are the items we protect. It also depends on how many customers are taking it, right? If you only have one customer taking it, it doesn't make sense to bring in goods. We've got a bunch of packaging varieties, SKU counts. So it's probably in total, I would say 30% of our portfolio is covered. Of the 30%, we probably bring in about 20% of our total season buy. you know, I think again, these items are probably items that are generating 50 to 60% of our overall revenue. So you're hitting the big key hitters, and you know, I would say timing is everything. Here at Moose, we don't have our own domestic warehouse. So as we use 3PLs, you know, the holding cost of bringing goods in, you really kind of got to time the market in which you need it. And we know that here coming into fall, 60, 70% of your business happens in the last 7-8 weeks of the year. So you've got to balance that, I think, against all of the supply chain delays and inbound transit issues that we've experienced here in the last 12 to 18 months.
Makes sense. Well, like I alluded to, would love to talk a little bit more about retailer pressures. So we know these have always existed, but they seem particularly challenging given all of these other supply chain disruptions, inflationary pressure, demand shifts. So ultimately, how are your businesses accommodating those retailer initiatives like sustainability and RFID on top of everything else? And so maybe here we can start with Scott. How are you thinking about this particular challenge?
Well, a couple of different subjects there. So first of all, let me touch on sustainability. You know, we as most of people in the toy industry are focused on sustainability as far as their products, packaging, et cetera. You know, everyone's at different stages of that, and you know, and as that evolved, it's important to the consumer. The thing that you know, we all have to, and one of the realities of this is that there is a cost of sustainability. And we as manufacturers have to understand what the balance of the cost is and delivering that promise to the consumer. And then the consumer wants sustainability. You know, at what level are they willing to pay for what level of sustainability? And I think that's one of the things that as an industry, we still have to navigate for a period of time because, you know, with that additional cost, how does it affect, you know, the cost structure of the product, the value of the product, et cetera. So that's going to be one of the challenges in the evolution that we have as an industry as we move to sustainability, being able to do it at prices that are still realistic and the consumer is going to pay for and still deliver that promise of sustainability. The other one, which I'm sure many of you on the webinar are involved in some way, shape, or form right now, if you're partnered with Walmart, is RFID. They came to us with, you know, at the beginning of the year, asking us to implement this. And, you know, as an industry, you know, everyone's embracing RFID. We know we have to do it. I think that, you know, with us and a lot of people, the timing could have been a little bit better. However, we're dealing with it. You know, we will implement RFID, you know, by the end of the year, first of next year. And, you know, the challenge with that is how do you implement RFID from the standpoint of how it impacts your inventory overall, because, you know, Walmart's the only one to do it. But I think that my prediction is what you will see is that as Walmart has pretty much ripped the Band-Aid off with everyone, that you'll see other retailers begin to follow suit because the technology is brilliant. And, you know, and what it does from an efficiency standpoint, managing inventory at store level, et cetera, will really be a cost savings. And I think it's going to benefit the full supply chain on both sides, not only the retailer side, but the manufacturer side. And then how do we as manufacturers use that same technology on master cartons and things like that to expedite, you know, our processes in warehouse and things like that, and begin to reduce, you know, our cost as far as inventory management. So you know, I think it's something we're doing, we're embracing, we're moving forward. Timing was a little tight for us, but, you know, we've got agreements and we're moving forward with the program, you know, into the first part of next year.
What about on your end, Teddie?
Yeah, you know, I think Scott nailed that. We're very much aligned with everything he said. You know, I guess let me focus in on sustainability. You know, here at Moose, one of our company goals is protect the planet, and so we're very much aligned with retailers in pushing for environmental sustainability and being a better steward of the world. We are already moving towards, you know, shifting towards a plastic scarce model. So that means we're going to be using 100% recycled materials. You know, we're looking at how to make product that's at end of life recyclable or compostable. And we're looking to sort of reduce waste in our operating spaces, so offices, warehouses, manufacturers, and really reducing our overall emissions and water usage footprints. Now, all of this comes with a cost, right? And so in the immediate term, margins are going to be impacted. But we know it's the right thing to do. And it's what our research actually tells us consumers want. So based on some polling that we've done or that we've received, we know that 64% of Gen Zers and millennials are influenced by sustainability when making purchases. And 45%, so nearly half, refuse to buy from non-sustainable brands and retailers. So, we've got the big boys out there, Mattel, Hasbro, they really very much are leading here, but it is the way of the future. And I think the toy industry is shifting, and we certainly want to be along for the ride. So we are committed to being more sustainable, and I think you're just going to see more and more of it here in the coming years.
Makes sense. Really interesting. All right. Well, the last question here is a bit more open-ended, but taking out your crystal balls a little bit, what else do you all anticipate will become common industry practice over the next 2 or 3 years? And here we can start with you, Rick, if that's all right.
Yeah, not a problem. Well, I think one of the things that I'm seeing, and it's starting to happen in the last couple of years, is our production and preview calendars have been creeping up slowly, as you could all maybe on the panel could see, and also the viewers. A lot of the following seasons previews are being asked to move up a little faster. Product ready dates are moving up faster. Shipment dates are moving up a couple of weeks to maybe even a month. So I anticipate as we move forward, being ready early. I know it's hard to say because we're in a high trend industry, but one of the things that we are seeing the pressures from some of the retailers is having some information to them on product for following years and seasons available sooner. And I think it's not a bad thing. I think a lot of times once you have the relationship with the retailers, is that collaboration that you get with them, and I think a little bit of the buy-in early is always good. But I think the retailers are pressuring us a little bit. I think we're going to probably, and I'm optimistic that some of the information as to how quickly they're going to give us their commitments is going to be sooner as well. That's wishful thinking, but I think that could all eventually kind of come in line. But I do anticipate earlier calendars as we move forward.
Makes sense. What about you on your end, Scott?
Well, yeah, I can't agree with Rick more with what he said there, because it's a biggie and it's affecting us. One of the other things, and it was mentioned, Rick actually talked about it when he set up the first question earlier in COVID, but COVID accelerated e-commerce, the growth of e-commerce by 3 to 5 years. And it really put us into that new paradigm. And it moved us to, where Target and Walmart began to put more focus on e-commerce, and you move from brick and mortar to omni-channel retailers. And the challenge that manufacturers are going to have is that, being able to put their entire catalog out for sale through e-commerce, and how you support that from a logistics standpoint. So companies are going to have to be looking at their infrastructure to move to have the ability to ship direct to consumer, whether you do it through your own website or whether you support other retailers direct to consumer. I mean, there's the balance that you have with Amazon now, but now that everyone is accelerating that business, and that format at retail has accelerated, everyone has to move at a quicker pace to make sure that logistically you're set up for that. But the other thing about e-commerce that is now becoming much more important to the launching of product is that, there's only so much space at brick and mortar, and e-commerce is a place that, retailers are looking for you to prove yourself before they'll take up shelf space, but having the logistics set up to be able to service those items and SKUs is from a D2C standpoint is going to be real important, and it's going to be investments that companies have to make.
Makes sense. What about on your end, Teddie?
Yeah, for me, I think buyers will further rely on data analytics to drive placement and promotional awarding. For them, it's really about profitability and proven success now. And I think in all of the buyers we work with, they really are becoming more and more averse to taking risk. So companies need to invest in building out their analytics capabilities, to help their partners make smarter, more informed decisions. So, this includes, I think, investment both in personnel and in solutions. I think Alloy is a good one. It's great at cleansing, accessing, visualizing the data and really opening it up to a broader audience. Here at Moose, we like to say, we're in the business of democratization of data, right? The more eyeballs we can get on the data, the smarter we are as a whole. And I think that is the wave of the future.
We do see that high bar coming from retailers, and often effective strategies are, we're going to be analytical partners who are delivering insights for you. So absolutely makes sense there. Curious, in this vein, we did have a question come in and from the audience, and curious if anyone on the panel has a strong point of view on how you see the B2B marketplace, such as FAIR, impacting the industry. Is this something top of mind, or do any of you have a strong point of view on that front?
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in. I'm not too familiar yet with FAIR. It's not something we've given particular attention to yet, but something I will look into.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we're still focused on our retailers and delivering straight to the consumer.
So that's next year's panel discussion. We can dive into that one there. All right. Well, another question that came in was particularly timely because, believe it or not, it's directly related to our last poll question of the day. And so let's tee that up. But the question from the audience here is, with the pullback in consumer spending, how does the group feel Toyco's marketing budgets will be impacted? Do they see a shift to digital versus traditional TV spends? And so this is related because this was in our prep sessions, a discussion point. And so we can have this poll and then probably have a discussion a little bit about how we're thinking about marketing budgets and the impact there. So for the broader audience, how much of your marketing budget is allocated to consumer-directed digital spend? So this would be YouTube ads, Google ads, OTT, just to get a pulse for where people's spend is at. And then curious if anyone on the panel has more perspective on how you all are thinking about marketing budget and shifts in strategy, or sort of potential shifts in strategy as you look forward over the next little bit. So Anne, I don't see the response is coming in, but if we've got a good cut here. So we got 33 respondents here from the group here. And looks like almost half the marketing budget is 0 to 25%. About 27% is that 26 to 50% spend. 18% is in that 51 to 75%. We've got 9% who the marketing budget is 76 to 100% of spend there. So really, really interesting there. And what would be also interesting is to capture, what did it look like last year, and has the strategy started to shift? But maybe we pass that on to the panel in terms of how you all are viewing about those shifts in marketing spend.
Well, I think consumer directed is, that question might be being interpreted as just typical consumer advertising. But I think, the thing that we look at now is, especially with, digital media and how digital drives to e-commerce platforms, even if you're spending on an Amazon or a Walmart.com, it's still consumer directed. It's just you're directing it to retailers now. So so it's really looking at it from the standpoint of how much of your consumer directed is more national messaging and and then how much of your messaging is messaging that is probably delivering a lot of the same attributes in your marketing message, but it's being done directly through, the retailers or directing to the retailer website. So I think, that's the thing that we look at is how do you balance the national messaging, and then when does that national messaging then translate through retailer specific promotion, and using those platforms to deliver your national message just in a more direct way that impacts point of sale.
Makes a lot of sense.
I agree with Scott. I would say for years we've seen that traditional linear TV, the ROI on that stuff has just been diminishing, right? And so, at Moose, it's about using digital marketing in conjunction with linear, right? We oftentimes are layering on top to get the best ROI because digital alone doesn't return what we need it to. And so sort of employing all aspects of that, identifying really the key target times in which we want to be running linear and digital in conjunction. Our budgets, from a percentage are flat, right? We're being asked to trim as we look forward and see sort of upcoming, I think, economic pressures going forward. And so we really are not, I would say we are seeing a minor shift towards digital. But, our formula really isn't going to change. I think, to be smart, you really have got to layer the two together. One without the other just is not as effective alone.
Yeah. I'm part of that 9%, just based on our Bonkers business model. We're inherently digital. The licenses that we go out with are 100% digital. So it's inherently digital. So we, 70 to 100% of our marketing budget is all digital.
Really interesting.
Teddie brings up a really good point, because when you look at just linear now, you can't, the spin that you need to get the same kind of coverage it's much harder to do now. And if you don't layer, you can't reach the eyeballs that you used to when it was pure linear. And I mean, and the other thing that I would throw into what Teddie said was that it's not just digital, but OTT. And that is another part of kind of an extended linear strategy now, as far as what we're looking at as far as our marketing mix.
Well, thank you all for being flexible. It's really great as questions come in to get live answers, and just appreciate all the insight for the conversation today. So on behalf of the broader audience, thank you, Scott, thank you, Rick, and thank you, Teddie. Really insightful perspectives. If we were on a stage, we'd have applause, and so here's the kind of digital applause for your insight and participation here. And then just so grateful to the broader audience for joining and being active participants. And so best of luck to everyone as we navigate these tricky times. Continue to be the space for innovation, and really have a great rest of your day, everyone.
And thank you, members, for joining us, and for our members for participating in this session this afternoon. A copy of the recording will be made available in the coming days. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.